What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Anime Association, and I am your host, Kyle Tim. And today we will be talking about episode 2 of 2B Hero X. But before we begin, I have my co host here with me, and I'll let him introduce himself.
What's going on, guys? It's Anime Addict 1999.
So, today, for one, obviously, we're discussing it, so there's going to be spoilers, but that should be a given. But today on episode 2, we had a pretty big um, emotional moment that happened and something that left more to come along and really opened up more questions. So at the very beginning, we got the reveal that Moon wasn't dead, but we also don't know what that was whatsoever that he saw. Like, is he hallucinating or what? I know he hinted at it, but we don't know what's going on. And then we found out she really didn't like even being around Nice. That's his name. Yeah, Nice. And so I want to ask you, what did you think about that first part of the episode with the reveal, and then how she really was like feeling confined?
Yeah, so for a majority of the episode, I was honestly confused and I had to kind of, get other people's opinions and standings on it. A lot of people were saying that he was dreaming about it, which I personally thought was kind of a lame cop out for the reasoning. Other people were saying that they had a theory that this was like basically him foreshadowing like her death in the future, which I think if that were to be the case, that would be a much better reason than it was just like a dream. He just wakes up, she's right there. The whole thing with her not necessarily liking Nice's company, I kind of thought that was like a funny situation because like it seemed like she wanted to be a hero, but not necessarily one associated with another hero, if that makes sense. So basically, like we saw throughout the episode, the whole relationship between them was like a facade to the news and to the media. Um, but this was something to where she kind of had to like grow and like become a better person and then come to appreciate Nice and who he really was.
Yeah, I totally get that too, because we find out, well, we kind of already knew that Nice was more of a, it's his own entity versus, of the persona of Nice is its own entity versus who it is. So they, like you said, they wanted to try to keep up the facade and everything. And when they got to talking about whether or not she really liked Nice at all, at first I was thinking like it was a one time I did, but then I built resentment towards him because like he was a jerk or something. But we never got that. I still kind of think maybe there's that element of he's not the nice guy that you might think he is, almost like some, like Homelander or something. Uh, but taking it back to the beginning of the episode, I like the idea of it's like a foresight premonition type of thing. But as you were saying that, I got to thinking, what if it unlocked, like the suit has some type of power, or gave him some type of power to where he could see a possible future, but then he can end up, the way he thinks, he can end up changing it, uh type of thing, because we see as it progresses, it almost changes the trajectory of what's going on because they're bound by contracts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I also think that could tie into the real Nice, and maybe that was why he ended his life because he had seen something in the future and he didn't like he just didn't know how to handle it, so he just decided to go off the side of the building.
Yeah, and then that kind of brings us into more of like the later part of it. I think it might have had something to do with, what was the guy's name, Wreck or something like that. Wasn't that the
Yeah,
other? Yeah, but before getting to that, they come up with the elaborate plan of faking Moon's death in order to get out of it. And I thought that was interesting because at first they made it seem like no matter what, you have to stay in this contract and we're going to make them fall in love, almost like they were going to force Stockholm syndrome on both of them, right? Uh, and then I think I might have missed something, but I don't remember exact. I think they just kind of went to he had this plan after like snapping the swing in half and every. I don't think they really led too much into developing the plan, just going straight to the plan type of thing. Like why she would answer like agree to something like that. Did I miss something with that?
You talking about like why Moon agreed to do it?
Not Moon, the corporation. Why the corporation allowed to break the contract if they fake her death.
Oh, I yeah, they didn't really explain. I guess it was more so like they just wanted to appeal to her because she was basically voicing her opinion and saying like she didn't want to continue it. So I guess they were just trying to respect her wishes.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess really because their whole thing is like they're a marketing agency in it of themselves. So I guess it makes sense they didn't want to break the contract without having the visual of something going on because they wanted to look all sweet and everything. How did you feel about the plan and how like the swing and then like them bonding eventually? How'd you feel about all that?
Yeah, at first I was actually like trying to figure out what it was because I couldn't with what they pulled in episode 1 at the very end with, her dying supposedly. I didn't know if this was something that was going to lead to her actually dying or if this was like, just them coming up with this plan in order to show the media that she's dead. So the whole time I'm watching, I'm kind of trying to figure it out. But I will say that I did end up liking it towards the end. And then the whole thing with Rec being involved, and it seems like he kind of went off script because he was actually affiliated with the real Nice, and he could tell that Ling Ling was portraying Nice in this situation, and so he was basically trying to, excuse me, like stop him, and then also trying to. I couldn't tell what his goal was with Moon. If he was trying to, um, I don't know, like get her on his side or something. I was confused about that part.
I was too, especially when so at first I thought it was like a love triangle type of situation where like Rec was like his lover and then like he would like where is nice type of thing like he just disappeared type of thing. So I thought maybe it was like a jealousy type of fight thing going on. I'm not sure if you got that vibe originally, but I did. And then when it all got revealed, I was kind of like, well, he's not trying to fake killer at this point in time, and he already knows what's going on. So it might have just been emotional distress that had him trying to kill both of them at that point in time because your best friend died at that point in time. Uh, how did you feel about them originally introducing the dynamic between them? Did you feel like it was like a love triangle type of thing at first?
Yeah, at first I was kind of associating it with like a crazy ex because he was like, "Why aren't you responding to my messages and stuff like that?" Um, but like when they showed the whole backstory with him like being Nice's best friend, and he basically felt betrayed because Nice kind of moved on because he was so busy with being the number one hero and everything. So it was kind of just like I felt bad for Rec, to be honest, because um he all he wanted was his friend. So it was basically he kind of like you said, the emotional stress built up. He went off the deep end, and then he was actually trying to kill Ling Ling and Moon.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt too, and I felt bad for him as well because like you said, all he wanted to do was be with his friend, and like help his friend and build with his friend, and that's exactly how he got into being his nemesis was to give nice something to bounce off of. Like a always there's an overarching threat just to help him get more notoriety and stuff like that. And then just to disappear, I could see how that could trigger like an emotion of betrayal uh type of thing. Do you think Rec actually died while falling off?
Um, honestly, I don't know. That's a good question. I guess
Yeah,
if
I
I guess if I
go.
had to get, sorry, I guess if I had to guess that he is, um, yeah, I'm actually not sure.
I'm kind of thinking too, but if he is alive and left like that, then there has to be some type of reason for him just kind of falling off with no connection type of thing, like an ending. But then again, we don't know how the series is going to play out. It could be like an episodic type of thing where you have the villain and then just have minor villains throughout each episode. Uh, but then we get into the death scene. I'm not sure about you, but when it originally happened, I thought she actually got slashed for real.
Yeah, I was also trying, cause like I said, I was trying to figure out like the whole situation. So, at first I was like, oh, like she's actually gonna die, but then I was like, well, this is a whole like facade type thing, like they're portraying, so it's probably like a fake thing. And then she said, that the I forget who she is, but gave her like the fake blood pack, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, it's fake.
yeah. Uh, it was just when it originally happened where she was like, "I was so busy trying to protect you, I forgot to protect myself." And then I was like, "Well, maybe she did because he did go off script." So it was like maybe it was like a plan gone wrong, type of thing. But they did such a good job at making you feel like it was a real death. I felt like they really sold it to the point, and I don't feel like he was acting when he was crying. I feel like he was genuinely sad that she was leaving.
Yeah, I agree. Because even though they weren't like dating, he already had like that connection to her because he was, creating all the video packages and all these different things when he used to work for the agency and stuff. So it was like he already had a connection to her, and he knew that them doing this was basically them not living together and spending time together anymore. Because they spent time together for a whole month. Um,
Oh
so
yeah,
that
they
was
did.
another thing that basically they kind of had a whole month to like grow closer, and then they had to just say goodbye.
Yeah, and that's what really sold it was because it was his true feelings, and then of course, the fake death. And I totally agree with what you were saying. It just completely surprised me that it actually moved me to an extent for something that I knew was a fake death. Like I felt like she was actually dying, and I was like, "This is so strange. I don't know why am I feeling like a character is dying, and I know that they're not dying."
Yeah, I also think the confusion, in my opinion, the episode was kind of confusing. I feel like the confusion was basically another part in playing that because you didn't know 100% if it was fake. And even though they were like leaning it towards that way, it kind of seemed like she might actually die.
Yeah, yeah. I think they did a good job at selling it at the very beginning of the fall and everything, but we skipped over it. What did you think of the fight sequence when they went to the comic book art style?
Yeah, so that's actually my favorite part of like the first two episodes so far is when they change over to like the comic book 2D type of style type thing. Cause I was saying this in my reaction, like one of the things I appreciate about the show is like how they change between the art styles. And even though the one art style, like towards the beginning of the episode, they were like showing how Moon and Nice met, I didn't really uh appeal to that type of art style. But like I said, with the art style later, like you brought up the comic book art style, I like that part probably the most.
Yeah, and I really liked how they transitioned into it, how he was walking and everything was changing around him, and then he changed once he took off. And I thought the choreography was beautiful in it. And it I don't know why, but this show is just taking me by surprise every time I and I don't and it's like I didn't expect it to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be good neither. And like you said, the changing of the art styles, I think so far there's only been two art styles I didn't like between the two episodes. Uh no, I can't even say that. I think that it was at the beginning of this episode that I really didn't like for real neither. But after the fight, after her going free and then going, to the beach, we get it wasn't a post credit scene, but we got the guy, the host lining up of who night the new nice is, and then we got the octopus thing. The one thing I did not like about this scene was that he conveniently had a picture of Lin Ling to slide on top. And I was like, how why in the world does he have the picture of this one guy and nobody else?
So I think he tied it into the boss, Ling Ling's former boss, because he when he came into the studio looking for a fight in the first episode. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the host here, he basically was like, "Oh, so let me see who worked for this guy." He found Ling Ling, and then he was like, "Oh, he kind of looks like nice," and then he placed the two pictures.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't even really think about that. I was just like, why this is such a convenient type of thing that he could do it. But I guess if you're linking up the boss, that makes more sense. Uh Now what because I'm gonna ask you about the I'm guessing the main villain is going to end up being the octopus suit thing. And then at the end in the credits you see the possible 10 heroes that he's about to try to they forced it upon him, but he's going to try to become a part of the 10 heroes. How do you feel about the 10 hero thing and the villain?
Yeah, so I'm excited to meet the other heroes. I was actually trying to figure out myself, like, if this is gonna be like how the pacing's gonna go with each hero, because this is supposed to be like 24 or 25 episodes. So I was told that this current arc that we're on with Nice is 4 episodes. So if they're doing it like that, I don't think they're gonna fit in all 10 heroes unless some of them are only gonna be 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah. Well, if it's going to be 24, I guess they could kind of fit all 10 like you said if it's 2 episodes though. Uh yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
would.
know it was going to be I didn't know it was going to be that much. I wonder if it's going to be more of they fight together type of thing, and then you just learn who they are. I'm not too sure if he's going to fight the heroes or if it's like a my hero type of thing where it's like a social system where you build up and get into the top 10 through like points and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do think in terms of the rankings, it's based off the trust of the people because that's how they gain their powers. Um, but in terms of like all them coming together, I actually could see that happening too, especially if this ends up being the main villain, then they kind of all come together to work against him.
Yeah. And then it kind of makes sense that the name of the show is 2B Hero X because it could be 2B Hero 10. So he's trying to just make the top 10. So maybe this season is him getting breaking that barrier of getting into the top 10 so he becomes the 10th hero. Uh
Well,
and then huh?
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but there actually is a hero called X in the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think I don't know about like who's the main one, but I think because he's one of them, that's why they called it that.
Well, damn, you just dropping more spoilers on me. God damn. Nah. I didn't know that. Maybe it's a play on both of them or maybe X is the number 1 or something. Uh but as far as the villain, kind of looks like he has like some type of like demonic powers. because the from watching it, I'm not sure if you played the game Destiny, but he reminds me of Eris Moon or something like that. The the hive lady that has like the cloth over her eyes. That's kind of like some necromancy type of vibe. That's what I started getting from it.
Yeah, I because they call him God Eye, right? So I think it's something to do with like godlike powers, and obviously, someone to that level, like you're gonna need as many heroes as you can get. So like having the 10 heroes against someone on a with god level powers makes sense.
Yeah, and I was asking while I was reacting to it. Funnily, I was like, "Well, it's true. What's he going to do now that he sent old girl to Bahamas?" Which I don't think it's the end of her because we saw the ray gun at the end. So I think she's going to end up coming back. But I was wondering, like, what are we going to do from this point in time? And then we saw the X, the get into the top 10, and then the overarching villain. But do you have anything else that you want to add into before we wrap it up?
Um, Basically, I feel like this episode honestly did bring it a little bit down for me personally, but I do still have high hopes for the show. Like I do think, meeting the other heroes, and then if they tie things in with the God Eye villain and everything, I think it could definitely get a lot better.
That's crazy. It brought it up for me. I I felt like the boss, like the fish boss with the symbiote and stuff coming out of it. I wasn't feeling it, and then some of those changes between art styles were kind of jarring. But I felt like this episode flowed better, and it just gave us more story beats to go on to. But it brought it up. It brought it up for me. Uh, but I think we'll wrap it up from here and join us next week for episode 3. Once again, my name's Kyle Tim with Anime Addict 1999. Check the description for all of our socials. Peace.